Hey everyone, this is Asbed Bedrossian,
And this is Hovik Manucharyan.
and we are talking with Gev Iskajyan on the latest conditions and events during the Artsakh Blockade. Gev is with the ANC in Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh. He lives in Stepanakert. Today is June the 2nd, 2023. This is the 173rd day of the Artsakh Blockade. Hey Gev, how are you doing?
Hey, Gev.
Hi, Hovik. Hi, Asbed. I'm doing well. Hope you guys are good.
Gev, it's been 3 weeks. I think we last talked on May 11th. We want to know a little bit about the living in humanitarian conditions in Artsakh for the last month. Tell us how the food situation is. And also, because of the extreme blockade at this point, with the checkpoints not allowing anyone to go through, what happens when stuff breaks in somebody's home? How do you find the parts and the pieces to get on with life?
Good question, Asbed. So, in terms of the food situation, it's relatively the same as we last spoke. It's plateaued to a certain degree. I would say, though, a really important thing that you brought up, how do we get, we always talk about food, we talk about medicine, but we don't talk about the supply end of a lot of this stuff. So, how do we get vital supplies into the country? If your car breaks down, you need a car part. Nobody manufactures car parts here in Stepanakert. So, that's a loss there. If, let's say, something happens with your heater, something happens with your plumbing, something happens with your house, something happens in a
Exactly.
business that relies on mechanical equipment, that's been at a near zero. There's a certain plant here, a factory here that employs a good amount of workers, and what they make are those the tubing that people use for agriculture that the water flows through. So for that tubing, they need actual like plastics and certain chemicals and materials. If that stuff isn't coming in, not only are those workplaces and businesses not operating on top of it, but those people don't have jobs. There's a socioeconomic effects to this. So your car breaks down, you can't get to work, certain chemicals, certain products, materials that so many of the businesses that operate here rely on can't get to work. Not only is the population denied of that stuff, but you also have a drawback where unemployment rises and all those other issues that are tied to it as well.
Gev, it's been more than 2 weeks since Pashinyan, in the clearest of terms, stated that he recognizes Artsakh as part of Azerbaijan. I can never get myself to say that, but how is that affecting the morale of the people? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a ludicrous thing to say, and it's messing with all of our identities. But I think the most affected by this are people who are in Artsakh themselves, who have been bearing the brunt of being Artsakhtsi and being Armenian for the rest of the Armenian population worldwide for the last 35 years, only to be told that they're now Aliyev's property. How do people feel? How are they motivating themselves to resist?
Yeah, so I think if you're, careful with what the words that Pashinyan has been saying, not just for the last 2 weeks, but over I would say more than a year, he's been making the same
Yeah,
exact statement in various ways. So it first started with, we're ready to recognize everyone's territorial integrity, right? And then he actually went more specific. He's like, we're ready to recognize X and X square kilometers of Azerbaijani territory and X square kilometers of Armenian territory. And obviously, in those parameters, he's including Artsakh within Azerbaijan. So, what the Civil
right,
Contracts Party has been doing, what Pashinyan has been doing, he's made this statement a long time ago. Now he's
right.
slowly, concretely leaking it out. So, in terms of the effect on the populace, I would say they've had that effect almost a year ago because they're more acutely aware to those words than, let's say, the general population, maybe in Armenia or in the diaspora, because this directly affects our homes where we live. So I would say the effect should be more shocking and I would say reverberating throughout the diaspora, throughout Armenia, for people that have been waiting for him to concretely say it, people that have been making excuses, people that have been apologists to what he's saying. He's outright stated it within like square kilometers there. But in terms of for the people here, I think that this has unfortunately been a reality. This has been an acute reality for them for a while.
At the same time, it seems like as part of this choreographed so-called negotiations process, Aliyev made some statements about a week ago where he basically said, if Araik Harutyunyan resigns, if Artsakh dismantles all of its state institutions and symbols, and if essentially Arek surrenders and everyone else sort of asks for forgiveness from the oil sultan of Baku, then he might consider magnanimously giving people amnesty so they can become loyal Azerbaijani citizens. Obviously, in those terms, it was more a threat, an overt threat than anything else, because he also said the option of military operations in Artsakh is always a possibility. He also threatened Armenia. I always wanted to know, basically, I think that the entire hope of the Armenian nation is on Artsakh to be able to resist Aliyev. And if something starts, I mean, we can do everything we can here. And I'm sure that besides the few traders that we have at the top, the Armenian nation will try everything to come to the aid of Artsakh. What I'm wondering is, within Artsakh, how are the people motivated to fight? And specifically, we also heard the United States State Department saying that, oh, we welcome Aliyev's grant of, or sort of consideration of amnesty. It seems that also diplomatically, Aliyev has the upper hand, at least with the West, maybe even Europe.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about? I know these are I don't want to spread panic, but like some potential very serious scenarios, either an attack by Aliyev overtly or a wider military conflagration in the region.
Yeah, so let's start with the last point. I think one, whether it's United States or the folks in Brussels, to them, and even to Antony Blinken, especially, they view this as a career PR moment. Everybody wants to be able to solve a crisis somewhere in the world. Secretaries of state want to do that too. Unfortunately, I think Blinken is so bullish on pushing this deal forward. Every consideration has been made for him except that of the livelihood and the people of Artsakh. So I think at any cost, and this is what we need to be really wary of, these foreign governments want to see a deal done here. And unfortunately, Artsakh doesn't have the same cards that Azerbaijan has in terms of force, military force, and all those other tools at its disposal. And we have a completely ineffective Armenian government on that end. So you're absolutely right.
Gev, in Artsakh, does anyone think that Pashinyan has a mandate or even the right to give away Artsakh or dissolve its government?
No. If we're talking about the vast majority of the population, no. And also, you're talking about people that post-war have chosen to either come back here or to remain here. They have a huge stake in this game. So nobody is, okay with that fact. I think what our aim is, what our goal is, one, not to give into any concessions in terms of Aliyev saying, you guys need to dismantle, you guys need to disband, blah, blah, blah. Those are the first steps of integration for him.
The statements from the parliament leadership in Artsakh are strong. How is the morale of the common citizen on the ground?
I would say, look, it's remained the same, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. What I mean by remains the same is I think that I don't see this like mass panic throughout the populace saying like, oh my God, this is the end. We got to find a way to go, blah, blah, blah. Folks are still here. Folks are still living through this blockade, living through all these difficulties because they understand what we're fighting for here.
Okay. This morning or yesterday, there was a report that Artsakh men are not being allowed to travel through the Azeri checkpoint if they suspect that the man has participated in Artsakh wars. Well, so this is, in a sense, every man in Artsakh.
Yeah, and this is actually something that we heard from the first time I heard this was not from government members here. It wasn't for political pundits. It was actually residents of Artsakh, the common folk, the laymen here. Before all of this started, when they put up that checkpoint, people said that, look, what they're going to do is whoever they want, they're going to mark as a quote-unquote separatist. They're going to mark as a quote-unquote terrorist, and they're going to go after the people specifically that have fought in either the last war or in the first war. And they're going to selectively pick and choose these people. They're either going to deny them entry or they're going to arrest them. And then this is what we've been trying to get across to when I get on calls with congressmen and senators. This point, this notion that Azerbaijan is just setting up a customs checkpoint, it's all, fine and dandy. It's an innocent thing. It's like, absolutely not. They're legitimately cutting off Armenia from Artsakh. And secondly, they're controlling everyone that goes in and out of that place. So that human factor that we don't talk about often, the fact that they can grab anyone at any time and arrest them, this is
That's right.
this is a real grave concern.
People who know Azerbaijan have warned us that these checkpoints are basically a place to officially kidnap Armenians and make them disappear.
Exactly.
Yeah, and even though probably, I think they'll gradually increase their level of callousness. I think that maybe right now, like they want to still seem more humane, so they are just like checking paperwork. But yeah, nothing is stopping them from arresting. And Asbed, I think we should also mention that for many weeks, I think after they set up that checkpoint, even ICRC could not go through. So even supplies weren't going through. But now it appears that they're allowing the ICRC, both like in terms of people and supplies, people who need medical care. We should talk about this. It's not that like people are choosing to go through. It's people who need urgent medical care that they can't get in Artsakh are seeking to go into Yerevan to get treated. And their identity is being checked by Azerbaijan and they're being denied to leave. And yes, eventually that could turn into kidnapping.
Gev, so missing in this conversation that we're having today is Russia. And about a month ago, the new head of the Russian peacekeeping mission, General Lentsov, came in, if you recall. And we decided to wait until this conversation to kind of decide whether he's made a difference, if the Russian MO has changed. Have you noticed any kind of a difference in Russian attitude towards either side of this conflict?
Yeah, so on the positive end of the spectrum, what I've noticed in the last month is we haven't given a certain concession. If you guys remember during the other general that was here, week to week, you would hear something. Azerbaijan set up a checkpoint. Azerbaijan's firing into this area, and they're still doing their shootings and blah, blah, blah. But what I've been noticing throughout the last few weeks, usually it used to be the residents of Artsakh that would report a breach in the ceasefire and then report it to the peacekeepers. Now the peacekeepers are, before anyone says anything, confirming these ceasefire breaches, and they're the ones reporting on it. Secondly, I would say that it's, again, another positive. If you guys remember in the beginning, a couple of weeks ago, there was even trouble for the Russian peacekeepers to get in. There was trouble with the Red Cross getting in and out. That stuff has been alleviated to a degree. So the Red Cross is moving in and out. The peacekeeping trucks are bringing in a certain amount of aid, and it hasn't been halted yet. Again, not a ton of great news. I haven't seen any drastic major changes, but I haven't seen the bleeding get worse.
Okay. But regardless, I wanted to mention that both Russia and Azerbaijan are in breach of the November 2020 Trilateral Ceasefire Agreement.
Absolutely.
Because any way you look at the situation, there is not free movement of Armenians through the Lachin-Bertsan corridor.
Asbed, in all fairness, I think that you mentioned Russia and Azerbaijan, but you forgot to mention the third party of that November 9-10 agreement, Armenia, which has at many times officially acknowledge things that would put Russia in a difficult position. For instance, acknowledging that Artsakh is Azerbaijan. I think that, I don't want to excuse Russia, and definitely they have their own responsibility in all of this. But it is Armenia that has sort of also relinquished all of its responsibility in that contract. Basically, it has said that whatever happens in Artsakh is Russia's problem, and that is specifically Pashinyan's thesis, is that it's Russia's responsibility and we're withdrawing completely. Obviously, yeah. I mean, Russia has its own interests in Artsakh, and it has also a war to fight. But
yeah, look, and if I may add, the criticism of the Armenian government is absolutely valid here, especially in regards to when you're talking about Pashinyan saying this is Azerbaijan's territory. And Azerbaijan saying, okay, well, if you're going to say it's my territory, I have all right to set up a customs checkpoint. Mm-hmm. However, I also think that the Russian peacekeepers have a certain degree of responsibility because the this corridor was closed before they set up a checkpoint, before those statements that Pashinyan made. So yeah, at times, look, to say that the Russian peacekeeping contingency hasn't been at best lackadaisical, that would be, not true. They've been very lackadaisical.
I guess what we're saying here is that all three parties have not honored and are in breach of the November 2020 agreement. which is basically not worth the paper it's printed on. And in the case of Armenia, this includes relinquishing positions and authority in a manner that have compromised Russia's ability to meet its responsibilities. All right, let's leave it there for today, Gev. It was great talking with you. Let's talk again soon.
Good catching up with you guys. We'll speak soon.
Thank you, Gev.